So, last week when I sent out the last call for 2 days left to send in your superhero redesign submissions, I was thinking, maybe if we go crazy, we'll get another 50 submissions sent in. And there ended up being another 270 submissions sent in 2 days. That was crazy. And of course, it gave me so much selection for what I could draw in this episode. There were so many awesome submissions. As always, I'm sorry I can't redraw everybody's. I had a blast redrawing the ones that I did get to redraw, and if you weren't picked, I hope you at least enjoy this episode because there's a lot of cool stuff submitted. Let's jump right into the first redraw. Alright, the first submission that we're redrawing today is a super awesome variation of Black Panther sent in by Raven587, and Raven had this to say about the drawing. I call him Purple Tiger. I normally don't spend this much time on a drawing, but spent longer on this, and I think it paid off. His origin. Black Panther was captured by Killmonger and put in a testing chamber with an experimental tiger, and became Purple Tiger. He was supposed to be evil, but got his memory back and became good. And this one got me both because I love the style, I love the suit design and the vibrant colors, but also because I really like tigers. I think tigers are just they're probably my favorite animal, and I really like Black Panther as a character. And also I love the glowy bits on the suit. Anytime a suit has some kind of glowy bits to it, you can always do a little bit more interesting lighting because you can add a bit more rim lighting splashing off from the glowy bits, especially the energy ball thing. And I like the idea of taking Black Panther, who's got a pretty dark suit, and changing it to being very vibrant and colorful and fun. In terms of my redrawing, I really like how it turned out in general. It's a more detailed suit than I tend to draw, although I kind of scaled down a lot of the details. Also the pose, I've made it a little bit stiff, but overall, I'm really happy with it. I loved your submission. Thank you so much for sending it, and I hope you like my version of Purple Tiger. Next up, we've got another great submission from Bungie Lun? Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. And it is of Beast Boy, and here's the description. Here's my Beast Boy for the monthly characters. This version can use animals' abilities whilst in a mostly humanoid form. The design is mostly inspired by both the Netflix Titans version and the Young Justice version. And this one, I loved your style on it. That's the thing that really drew me to it the most. I like it's a little bit anime manga looking, and it's very angular, and that's something I've been wanting to try and do more in my art lately, is do a little bit more angular, be a bit more confident with some of my lines. So inspired by your art, I tried to lean into that in this redraw, and I really like how my version turns out too. I love the pointy hair, I gave him a kind of pointy face. I opened his mouth a bit and gave him some fangs. I imagined he'd have some kind of fangs. I think Beast Boy usually has that, and I imagine because this version has a lot more hair to him and is a little bit more animalistic, almost looks a little bit werewolf-like, that he would have those teeth. And I also love anytime Beast Boy's suit has some red on it, so I love that he had that red and white jacket. I thought that was really cool looking, and I like that he seemed as if he didn't have a shirt underneath the jacket, because that's just kind of a cool look in general, so I gave him some nice Beast Boy abs. And overall, this was just a fun, really cool one to redesign. Awesome redesign, and I hope you like my version of it. Alright, next up, we've got a Spider-Man submission that was sent in by #1 Spidey fan. So that's fitting. And this is a sort of Japanese-inspired Spider-Man, so I'll read the description. Meet Spider-Man Japan. I used the Japanese Red Sun as reference, also slight inspiration from Randy Cunningham, which is a show that I hadn't actually heard of before you mentioned it. I checked it out, and I really dig the style. I might have to try watching a few episodes. The gray I used isn't the color of his suit, it's just my horrible attempt of a shadow. I got that it was a shadow, I didn't think it was bad. His suit is nanotech and can form weapons. The spikes on his elbows can also form a giant shuriken. That's awesome. That's something I didn't really lean into in this, but I loved your design. The stark colors of just red and white was really nice. I loved the style of the spider on the chest. That's one of the things that got me right away. And I wasn't actually sure if I was going to do a Spider-Man in this episode because, the previous community redraw was all Spider-Sonas, so I did a bunch of Spider-Man stuff, and I promised I wouldn't draw Spider-Man for a month just after that episode, I think. But I knew I was going to have to do at least one, and I really dug your Spider-Man Japan-inspired. It was really cool. I loved using the red gradient across the character. I liked the eyes and everything about it, and it felt very Spider-Man 2099 inspired as well, and I absolutely love both the different Spider-Man 2099 suits. I think they're so cool. Love the spikes on the elbow, and I like how he had a bit of a popped collar kind of thing. And overall, I think it's just such a cool look. Awesome job, and I hope you enjoy my redraw. Next up, we've got a submission from Dings, and it is of Wonder Woman, and it's a really cool design. I love your drawing. Here's the description. Apparently, in one of the original stories, Wonder Woman is created by Zeus from a lump of clay, which is something I think they've retconned recently, but it absolutely was a thing, and I thought it would be really cool if that was more implemented into her design. Something like a Greek god statue. And I loved that idea. It was just such a great, simple premise. In your art style, it looked fantastic, and I really wanted to take a crack at it, because I love doing anything that has kind of a rocky texture to it. I love the broken, crumbling arm. It did make me think how useful this character would be in a fight. I mean, maybe you'd have to think through the lore a little bit, like maybe this version of Wonder Woman can regenerate limbs, or maybe she even shoots them at people. But anyway, for my redraw, I might have made the character a bit thicker than you'd originally intended, but one thing that I really like about my redraw is I did something that was inspired by the last Illustrator Reacts video when I was talking about that Dan Mora Chavez drawing where he's got that snake that kind of spirals and frames everything. So I took Wonder Woman's lasso and had it kind of twirling behind her and framing her in the image, and that's my favorite part of my version of this drawing. And then just doing the skin textures is always fun. I put more cracks and creaks and put more of them in places where her limbs would need to bend. And overall, it was just a great concept. I really love your original artwork. It's such a cool style, and I hope you like my version of it. Thanks for the submission. Next up, we've got a submission from Oreo Kitty Batman, which is another one of those cases where someone's name is different from the character they submitted. I always think those are funny. And we've got a really awesome Iron Fist redesign. And the description is pretty simple. Redesign of Iron Fist. He has armor, and the dragon is on his armor, not a tattoo. And this is another example of just a cool, simple idea redesign that was well executed, and I felt like I just had to take a crack at it myself. I don't know if I've ever actually drawn Iron Fist, maybe once before, and this idea of him with a bit more detail with some armor added onto him, it was such a cool idea, and I loved the sort of helmet mask you gave him, and the way I draw it, it ends up looking kind of like Daredevil's mask from end of season 1/season 2, his red suit, but of course in the Iron Fist colors, and I really like that. And it's another case where the character's got some glowy bits to him, so it can add some cool lighting around everything else. And I just based all of the lighting around the fist that's up, and having that cast lighting and shadow on the character. And I ended up adding a tiny bit of rim lighting around his other side near the end, but it was just a really cool concept. And I also am a big fan of anytime a character is largely padded up but just has their arms exposed. And I also, while I was doing it, I was thinking, why aren't his fists covered? And then I realized that I was a dope because Iron Fist needs to have his fists uncovered to be able to, glowy fist, iron punch, any kind of padding would probably just explode off if he had it on there. And I guess this one is one of the more static poses, but I think it works well for Iron Fist, and it was something a bit different, and it was a lot of fun for me to redraw this one. So thank you very much for the submission, Oreo Kitty Batman, and I hope you like my version. Alright, next up we've got an email submission from Ghostex, and the description goes as such. He is basically Bruce Wayne of an alternate universe who made a pact with Mephisto to revive his parents. As always, Mephisto tricked him, causing Martha and Thomas Wayne to die in a car accident shortly after. Now, as Demon Bat, Bruce not only has to fight crime, but also the forces of hell. The idea for the character comes from what would happen if someone with the strong morals of Batman and his rule of not killing was corrupted with the desire for revenge of the Ghost Rider. Also, because I love the designs of both. And they do both have pretty awesome designs, and you did such a great job integrating the two together. They're two characters that their looks work really well together, and you made that very clear from your drawing. I love the big sort of bat logo that, I'm not sure if this was your intention, but I made it a bit metallic looking, along with the shoulder blades, which did look like they were a little bit more metal. I love that you have some bones sticking out. I don't know if that's the character's actual ribs or if that's just built into the suit, and then how the sort of bat arm spike things are also kind of bony looking. That was just such a cool idea. And of course, again, I didn't even realize that I was doing this until just now, but this is another character that has glowy bits, so maybe that is influencing who I pick. I haven't looked back, but maybe that is a consistent thing through a lot of my choices. Anyway, for my redraw, I didn't really try to change much. I just tried to make my version. It was kind of tricky trying to figure out a pose that I felt kind of worked for both characters, and because a lot of the time, Batman's pose is kind of influenced by the fact that he has a cape. Oh, flaming Batmobile. That would have been a really cool thing to draw. I wish I'd thought of that. Anyway, great design. I had a lot of fun drawing it in my style. It was a good change up drawing a skull again, because I hadn't drawn a skull in a while. Also, those ears you had coming out of the skull head. Great idea. Such a cool design. Hope you like my version. Thanks for sending it, GhostX. Alright, and our last one for this episode comes to us from WCA52 on the Discord, and it is obviously an Aquaman redesign, and here's the description. Brought back with the mystical water hand, took away the sleeves and widened his collar to allow for easier underwater mobility. Good idea, great execution. I love your style in this drawing. I love the way you did the colors. I love that you added a bit more green to the upper parts of his suit. I think that's a great idea. Makes the whole suit feel a little bit more unified. I like how, in terms of his head look, he's a little bit of a mix between the scruffier Jason Momoa style Aquaman and the clean cut Aquaman. He's got, his beard is a little bit more smooth and trimmed, and he's got the short hair. It's such a cool look. I kind of wish that my version I'd had the gills showing, but the way his head is positioned, you can't really see his neck. I also realized while doing this that it was kind of hard to come up with a pose for Aquaman, just because I don't often draw characters swimming, so I was leaning a little bit too much into a Superman style pose that was flying, but I wanted to make sure it looked a little bit like the character was actually going through water. I ended up adding some bubbles to it to make it feel a little bit more underwater. I also make the eyes a little bit funky looking on my version. That's probably the one thing about it that I don't love, but besides that, it was a really fun one to redraw. Your original design is so... I could totally see this being in something like Young Justice, except it's, I guess it's a bit too detailed for a cartoon show because they try and keep the designs a bit simpler, but it's such a great design, and it was so much fun to redraw. Thank you so much for the submission, and I hope you like my version. I am loving my background for the next month. We got last week's submission redraws here, we got this week's submission redraws here, and I'm loving how all of this looks. And something kind of interesting I've noticed now that I'm looking at all of them is that every single character I drew has at least one knee in the air. All of them, this week's and last week's, they all have at least one knee in the... I mean, I don't really know why I'm bringing that up, I just thought it was kind of funny because I just noticed it. Knees up. Anyway, I'm sure you're all excited to hear what the September 2019 theme is going to be for the next redraw. And just before I announce it, please stick around and listen to the very clear rules that we're going to lay out for this one, because we're getting so many more submissions nowadays that myself and the mods need to lay out some slightly stricter rules to make sure nobody's submission is getting overlooked or is not on theme or any of that kind of stuff. But first, of course, the theme for September 2019 is going to be sidekicks and henchmen. And this time, it's not a redesign. This is original sidekicks and or henchmen or henchwomen, Basically, someone who helps out a hero or a villain. You can design your own original sidekick for an existing character if you want. For instance, you could give Spider-Man a sidekick. But don't do something like redesign a new version of Robin. It has to be your own original character. And it doesn't have to be a sidekick or henchman for an existing character. You can make it just totally original in your own world, whatever you want. I'm super excited to see what you all come up with. And now, let's lay out the rules for PopCross community redraws. Alright, anytime that somebody asks what the rules are or how to submit to a PopCross community redraw episode, I'm just gonna send them a link to this at this time code. Here are the rules. First off, there are only two places that you can submit stuff to be considered for a monthly PopCross community redraw episode. Either the Characters for Pop channel in the Discord, which is linked below this video, or to popcrossanimations@gmail.com. Also, please only send it to one of those two. Don't send it to both. I promise you, if you send it to one of those two places, I will see it. Also, only one submission per person, so please choose wisely and don't send one, then change your mind and send another later on. Just pick the one you want to submit and submit that one. And finally, please don't trace anyone else's artwork to submit for the redraw, whether an existing professional or another peer or something like that. Using reference images is totally fine, doing a very similar pose to someone else's work. Just please don't trace someone else's work. I want to see what you can draw, not how well you can trace somebody else's lines. If I notice that an image has been traced from an artist I'm familiar with, I'm not gonna get mad at you or something, I'm just not gonna pick your drawing for the redraw. I'm sorry that I have to lay down the rules a little bit more firmly. I'm so excited by the enthusiasm of so many people sending in their work and excited to potentially see it on this channel or redrawn on this channel. The main reason for these rules is just to make sure nobody gets overlooked. If you send it to Instagram or a different email address, there's a good chance I just don't end up seeing your work. So please follow the rules. I'm so excited to see what you submit, and I hope you're excited for the next month's redraw. But alright everybody, that's all for this episode of PopCross Studios. Thanks again to everyone who submitted. It was such a cool redraw. This has definitely been my favorite month so far for redraws. Everyone just seems to get better and better. I'm Christian Pearson, this is PopCross Studios, home of the Nerdy Start videos on YouTube, and I will see you in the next episode. Goodbye everybody.